I am hoping that we are live. It says we're live, and I've got sound. Okay. Sound does seem to be a little bit low to me. I'm using the auto setting for the mic, which could be a problem. So let me know in that case, and I'll see what I can do to adjust, if anything. It may not matter, at least in the live part of the broadcast, maybe a little bit more if somebody watches it later on YouTube. Hey, we just picked up a watcher. I'm so excited. This is WVU Football Going Deep. I'm Forrest Poston, here tonight to talk about mostly the 2025 recruiting class, but the 2026 recruiting class cannot be overlooked, even though it only has 2 people in it right now. Let us say it is off to a very good start. As we go along here, definitely if you have questions, a little slurry. Okay, I'm not sure. Well, let's see. Audio, okay. Robert, how is it coming in now? Has it improved at all? Or are we still slurry? Is it too low? Is it better? I do have an air conditioner running in the background, which might be a bit of an issue. We'll see how it goes. Hey, it's just between the 2 of us right now, so let's get the settings the way you like them. And if anybody else joins, that'll be their problem. The 2025 class, well, I'm sorry, it is flat out the best class that Coach Brown has brought in overall. If you look at the star ratings sort of thing, actually, I think even then it works out pretty much the best. I'm not that big on star ratings. I trust the coaches and their judgment a whole heck of a lot more. And I think one of the main things is not just the star ratings, but the precision with which Coach Brown recruits. He goes in with a plan, not just in terms of what players he wants, but what positions he wants to fill, how many at that position, and then gets to who are the best athletes at that position, who fit the system and the culture. We have had gaps in depth up to this point. The 2024 will largely see those go away. But 2025, I figure okay, hang on a second. I'm going to step away for a moment. I switched off the air conditioner, and if I have to end up sweating, I guess I'll sweat it out. Let us hope that has improved it. Do we have any background noises or sound quality issues at this point? Anyway, in the past, previous coaches, recruiting has been gunslinger recruiting, I guess. Rich Rodriguez basically just tried to grab as many guys with speed as he could and then fill in the rest. And if the speed guys didn't work out, on offense, he'd throw them over on defense. and Jeff Castile would somehow turn that into a working defense most of the time. With Dana Holgerson, uh, he was just, I mean, the portal is made for Holgerson. He would just try to grab a guy for a year or two, and if he threw together a good team, that year worked. If the team ran into any, real problems, they tended to go belly up. Now, I mean, if it was a high, what they considered an important game on the line, they would play hard, but they did not have any grit. And so Coach Brown, it's an entirely different matter. I mean, Bill Stewart recruited in much the same way. He just didn't have enough years to make it work. Filling in gaps. Well, it doesn't necessarily take as much time now with the portal, but the portal, you run into that danger of having to fill the same gaps year after year, which was what Holgerson was into, and what we're seeing now with Sanders at Colorado to some degree, or maybe to a bigger degree. All right, class of before we look at this year's class, going to take a quick look at who won't be here or there when these guys come in next year. And we take a big hit on the defensive line in terms of numbers. And of course, Martin, Mulba, and Vesterinen be multi-year players. Jackson's just here for this year. Again, a portal issue. And Simmons has been here for a long time, but hasn't really developed. But we're losing all three of the guys expected to be starters this year. Jackson is, going to play a lot as an edge rusher. Now, of course, the guys coming in this year are not replacing the guys going out. So we're losing 5. We don't have to bring in 5. It's more the guys, who are the rising, rising juniors and seniors, the guys that will be in their, last couple of years in 25 that have to replace these players. But we have to maintain that balance. We have to, keep it going so that we don't lose 5 guys in 1 year and not have anybody, to replace them except freshmen and sophomores, which was actually what Bill Stewart ran into his second year particularly. We're losing both starting Spurs. That's going to hurt. We're bringing in good Spurs. We've got some good Spurs, but this is where the age gap's going to be. Because we're not going to have anybody with experience come 2025. Cornerbacks, we're losing 3 guys, but they're all guys that are just coming in for 1 year. Again, by 25, we will be seeing some more consistency. Okay. This is yeah, I've heard that story before. Story of my life, yeah. I'll call you tomorrow. We'll get together later. Sure. Okay, Coos, I appreciate you dropping in. It's my job to give you a hard time. In the meantime, I'll try to make the show worth checking out tomorrow. Now, let's get to a question here from Charles. Now, that is a tricky question and also a simple question, I think. It's tricky because the way we name defenses doesn't really work anymore. I mean, calling something a 4-3, 3-4, or even a 3-5-5 is decades out of date. The base defense will be 3 down linemen, a spur who will, I think very, very rarely might, be down, but is usually going to be up on or near the line, but whether he will blitz or drop back is going to vary. Then sort of the complement, but slightly different on the other side, the spear, still going to have that. And that'll be a guy who is sometimes half linebacker, half safety, sometimes half safety, half corner. There'll be a lot of blitzing from the spear. Burks will play it a lot, but will sometimes bring in a corner if we're looking more at passing or some of the guys who have special blitzing talents. And then we'll have 2 corners and 2 safeties. That's the base defense. But how do you number it? Is it a 3-4? Oh, I mean, 2 linebackers who will both be interior linebackers. We're not really going to have the same Mike and Will that we did. They'll be kind of interchangeable, and they'll focus more tackle to tackle. So 3 down linemen, well, and then you've got 2 linebackers, a spear and a spur, which sounds like a 3-4. But the spear and spur are not the same as 2 additional linebackers. So it gets misleading. I would call it a 3 flex or a 3-2 flex, because the 3 down linemen and the 2 inside linebackers are going to be the most consistent part of the defense. We will have that almost every time. But I mean, there'll be times that we have 2 spurs and no spear, or 2 spurs, a spear, and 1 safety, 2 corners. So the base defense, I mean, you either call it a flex or you call it a 3-1-2, 1-2-2. I think something like that. But the staff is going to call it a 3-4. They've already called it a 3-4. Some changes in the terminology. The bandit is now the spur. Instead of a defensive end and a defensive tackle, we'll have a nose guard, and I don't know if it's 2 defensive ends or 2 tackles, but yeah. We'll have a boundary tackle and a field tackle, the way that we've been doing with the linebackers in the past. But it's going to be lots of little changes and not so much any big changes. Now, I think the results will be a lot different because the players are going to be different. We're going to have 2 of the best bandits that we've had since Brown has been here. I think we will have the best spear for the whole season. Jasir Cox came in for 1 year, took some time to adjust. The last third of the season, he was just playing out of his mind at spear, and then he was gone. That's the joy and grief of the portal. But I mean, we're going to have Burks, maybe Joseph, Garnes. I think we're going to have, and Collins and Jennings. Jennings is being groomed as the spear from the beginning, and I think he will end up being a better spear than what we've had. So I look for a lot more flexible and active defense. And like I said, I would just call it a 3 flex. And as far as I know, that name does not exist for defenses. So I think flex has been used to describe defenses in the past, but I don't know that anybody has ever called one a 3 flex, much less a 3-2 flex. But that is my best guess. And if the coaches want to use those names, they're free to do so. You think that does that kind of answer your question? I think we'll have to wait a few months to see whether I'm right or not. Again, with who's gone, we lose 2 starting safeties. Joseph we get for 2 years. Now looking at the offense, 4 out of 5 of the guys expected to start this year are going to be gone in 2025. But I think the 2025 line is going to be extremely good. The talent might be better than 2023. We've got some really talented young players starting to work their way up. They're going to have to play a good bit this year to be ready for 2025. But the line is going to look a whole lot different. But after that, we lose Cole Taylor. We've got 2 or 3 guys ready to fill in. And we lose Garrett Green. Now, that's depressing. Not because we don't have anybody behind him. Marchiol is going to shine in 25. It's going to be fun to watch, but it's not going to be Garrett Green. We have 4 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster right now. We have 2 committed. All 6 of them very, very, very good. But they aren't Garrett Green. They can run. And they can pass better than Green could when he was at their age. I expect Green to be a heck of a lot better this year. But it's just going to be so weird. Green didn't start until last year, but it's still going to be weird to watch the team without Garrett Green. The offseason is going to be weird. We'll be talking about what's happening with Green towards the NFL by that point. But anyway, looking at what's coming in, the way things stand right now, as of today, we have 20 commits in the 2025 class. Now, if you add everything up, 20 commits is actually more than the number of guys who are leaving, who are going to be gone. So we're already kind of expecting transfers because, that's going to happen. And hopefully it will be guys who are at least 3rd on the depth chart. And not moving up. Yeah, the last I saw, one of the I don't know which ranking it was, but they had the class at 13. Now that's going to change. We've added, I think, 13 commits here in the last 3 weeks, and all of these rankings factor in not just the star ratings, but the number of players who've committed. So a big reason we've moved up so well in the rankings is because of the number of guys who've committed. There are other schools who have gotten more, and they're moving up in the rankings as well. when other schools get their commitments, West Virginia will move back down in the rankings. Might finish in the mid to upper 20s, low 30s. It'll be a good ranking. I don't think it'll be the best ever, but it will be a good solid ranking, and it's players that the coaches are going to be able to work with. I mean, if you listen to the things that they are saying, they've bought in to Brown's thinking before they've joined the team. He's getting guys. When I listen to some of these guys talk, I mean, we don't get a whole lot of it, but they're saying things that Coach Brown says, and they haven't been around Brown enough really to pick it up from him. So they're already getting it from their family and from their high school coaches about, the importance of team, about how football teaches, other lessons with discipline and hard work. And if they already buy in before they enroll, and you've won already. You've got them where you need them to be, and they're going to start working. So when you can recruit the players that fit how you do things, that makes a huge difference. I mean, whether a guy's a 3-star or 4-star at one school doesn't mean they really are a 3 or 4-star at another school. Fit matters. So I'm not that, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love seeing the class highly ranked. And I think, we may be one of the top 3 classes in the Big 12 right now. We were like one of the number 5 or 6. Okay. Yeah, so that was, 4th in the Big 12. I don't know. Now, Charles, do you know whether or not that, because we did have the one commitment today. I don't know if, if that's been updated or not. Powell won't move the mark a lot. He is, one of those guys who just flew under the radar, and I suspect developed late because you've got all these players all over the country, and each service has a limited number of people able to look at them and come up with the ratings. So some guys get looked at very early and once and briefly. Others get looked at maybe multiple times. A 5-star is going to get looked at more than somebody's considered a 3-star. I think 24/7 may have been the only one to have ranked Powell. Another one of the commits hadn't been rated until he committed, and one got rated when 24/7 got word that he was going to commit. Now, shoot, I can't remember which one that was. Might have been Brown, but he still came out with like an 87, which means sometimes they miss somebody, and when they get around to looking, turns out they're pretty darn good. And of course, smaller, lesser known schools don't get looked at much. So, watching Powell, I like a lot of what he does. I've actually been watching a lot more of the highlights than I used to. It's definitely interesting. Powell is a bit rough. There are certain things, some bad habits that he has, like a lot of high school students who happen to be bigger, stronger, and faster than most of their opponents. But the coaches and the offensive line will teach him better habits pretty quickly. But now we actually do still have some openings. I think we Need one more receiver, probably. One more offensive lineman, a linebacker, and a defensive lineman or edge rusher or both. And there are guys out there who have visited campus. There are a couple who are expected to commit. They are, not planning to commit until end of this week or into July. But then again, Powell said he was going to commit on the 4th of July, I think, and then sometime this morning he announced that he was committed. So I think the way he put it was, hey, why keep quiet when you've made up your mind? Which raises questions with some of the other guys. We don't really know. The coaches may know who has made up their minds. Some of them they may be waiting on. But going to be some more excitement. Okay, Powell is included in the rivals listing. Okay. Yeah, I have not. Well, I've been kind of busy prepping for this show, so I did not follow some of the online news as much. One of the questions, actually, with we've just got a little bit left in the recruiting for this year, but we got Brody McWhorter to commit for 26. That raises the question of whether or not any of these guys who are kind of fiddling around with their decision, or maybe even guys who had decided against West Virginia before, will they change their minds when they see what is taking shape? Now, of course, a receiver might say, hey, I want to play for him. And, McWhorter has already been active on X there, talking to other recruits. But, even if you play defense, if you say, hey, they got a top quarterback, they're going to be a top team, I want to be part of it. So I am curious if McWhorter will still have a late influence on 2025. We've got two receivers that they're still, waiting for confirmation. One of them is taller than the other. They're about the same speed. The tall one, I'm not that impressed with how he runs his routes, but I don't think he's had to run, sharp, varied routes just because of his size and speed. The other guy seems to be a better route runner, but is the one considered less likely to commit. So, does signing McWhorter change that dynamic? I don't know. We'll probably never know. I'll just make you guys worry about it like I do. As you may have guessed, I'm also excited about this class. I'm excited about the class coming in 24. I have never in my life looked past a season. And just, looking at the 25 recruiting class as they've been coming in, definitely has me looking at 25 already, and I kind of forget sometimes to focus on 24. And I think 24 is going to be terrific. I've said in other videos, I think we make and win the championship game. With a little luck, it'll be against Utah. And, we don't play them in the regular season, and I would kind of like to prove that they are wrong. But they may not make the championship game. I think, some of the Utah fans, and this is absolutely nothing against the team, and kind of forget, when the fans get mouthy sometimes, you forget about the good fans and you forget about the team. I liked watching Utah the few times I watched them last season, um, but their fans are already trying to turn them into the hated rival of every other team in the Big 12. And I think they are succeeding in some respects. Taking a look at the offense, let's see, we are losing 5 offensive linemen, currently bringing in 3, probably will bring in a 4th. We've got one guy who's probably going to end up going to Michigan State. He was considered a lock for West Virginia, and then Michigan State made an offer, and he's from Michigan, and there it goes. But I do have a guy from the Bronx, New York, that they had for an official visit. I don't know if West Virginia has ever had a guy from the Bronx, or at least that's how he's listed in one spot on the Deer's always accurate social media, right? We never question what it says on social media. But we should have 4 really good offensive linemen either within the next couple of weeks, or they may end, if things don't work out now, they'll add somebody a little bit later when they've had time to sort through some guys, and maybe some guys who changed their minds about their earlier commitments. But I mean, Brown and his staff have been very precise about who they bring in for official visits. And, basically they focus on certain guys, they go after them, and they have been getting a lot of their first choices, relatively speaking. And when we aren't getting our first choice, we're losing them to people like Tennessee, Michigan State, maybe Michigan, I forget. So, if we're losing to, a worthy competitor. And I don't know if we've missed out on any of our second choices if we've had to go there. Now, a number of guys that were in for official visits have committed elsewhere, but it was because the preferred choice committed to West Virginia, so there's no more room. When that shows up on the internet, the stories will all typically say, that West Virginia lost a commit or something like that. And it's not exactly true, because the school had probably moved on. So the player may have still chosen the school they preferred anyway, but it wasn't so much that West Virginia was still trying and lost. Kind of annoys me, and there's a particular writer who has blocked me on X who does it in every story he publishes. Anyway, tight end, heaven knows we are loaded at tight end for the next century or so. Just bringing in one, they focused on Acquarty very early, brought him in for an official visit. I think he committed before his official visit. So we got our guy, and we went after Scott Fox for quarterback, got him. And Fox, again, I don't think he committed as early as McWhorter has, but he committed early, committed definitely before his official visit, and then has been coming to campus multiple times, as has, I think, Gavin Crawford, to help with the recruiting. So, that level of effort and cooperation from the players is, short-term and long-term, that's going to make a massive difference. Massive difference. Running back, I kept saying that we would sign 2, because I thought, we wanted to be able to work in pairs. Looks like Desenor is going to be at this point, the only running back in the class. Once he committed, the others either canceled their official visits or the school said they might as well cancel their official visits because we had our guy. Now, last year, they did end up signing another running back very late, and looks like a very good running back. But as always, you cannot overload a room too much, or you end up losing a player and end up being thin at another position. So now wide receiver, oh man, talk about being excited about the class. 2024, we're bringing in 1.5 tons of speed. 2025, we're bringing in more. And we're bringing in size. Because, we've got Mallory, who is 6'5", 6'4", something like that. Tyshawn Dews, one of the 2 West Virginia players in this class, watched his film. Now, I think he's listed at a 4.5 plus on the 40. He gets down the field, looks faster. He's got good hands, good balance. I'm not impressed with how he runs his routes, but I don't think he's been asked to run really sharp routes. Mostly it's either, mostly it's just a go pattern, what was once upon a time called a fly pattern back before I had gray hair. But, he can move, and I'm sure they will sharpen him up, turn some of those rounded routes into angled routes. And Montavon Quisenberry, oh, wow. Go to Huddle and watch his highlights. I mean, it is, you would almost have to think that it was scripted when you see he multiple times he left defensive players on the ground. Had one move there where he made 2 defensive players run into each other and fall to the ground, which you normally see in like a Keystone Cops movie. And again, I'm showing my age. No, I did not watch those when they first came out. Not quite that old and gray. Now, one of the things with this class, when June started, we had, I think, 6 or 7 offensive players. 6. Dessler, Quisenberry, and Mallory have committed in June. We only had 1 or 2 defensive players. Well, I said that was going to even out. Now, you look at the defense, and we have 11 defensive players committed compared to 9 offensive players. And, I mean, we've got this combination of guys who are already good, guys who are going to have started hitting their really developing stage. And, I don't think any of these guys are going to start their freshman year. No. A couple of them by their sophomore year or redshirt freshman year, and others, take a couple of years longer. But of course, now we're not going to be in a position where we have to hurry players into playing too soon. Coach Brown has said over and over again, we are a developmental program. We bring players in and coach them into being their best. And that does not mean that we bring in lower quality players. We bring in talented players, but teach them to be better. And I think, that's something that happens, I think, at some programs. They try to bring in high quality players, but they don't make them better players. And of course, you get some players who think they're good enough and don't want to do what it takes to get better. So developmental is not a negative thing. And it's actually, well, I know most of the people who watch my channel are pretty much as old as I am. So I think a lot of you have watched college football long enough to enjoy the process of watching players grow. Now, of course, with social media, streaming services, we get to watch and get to know these players a heck of a lot more than we used to. Even get to watch them grow in press conferences, because you know these guys, when they're freshmen and sophomores, most of them really stink at press conferences. But man, so many of them, you just watch them mature when they're in front of an audience. And that is, well, it's impressive for the player. It's also impressive for the coaches, because you know they work at helping these players develop and mature all around. So I think that is something to be proud of. And I keep meaning to watch press conferences for some of the other teams. I've watched some of the coaches, and it's not always particularly enjoyable. But I am kind of curious how West Virginia University players compare in their press conferences with some of the other players. Like to think that we win that one as well. But Taylor Brown, he's one of these guys. He's developing right now. I mean, his senior year, I think, in high school is going to make a big difference in him. Leonard Jean Charles, he's there. He is probably the most developed player on the defensive, maybe along with Terrence Edwards. Edwards, his film, you don't get to see many guys who know how to tackle. Again, that's something Coach Brown's talked about quite a bit, especially this last year. Going back to basics and really teaching the proper tackling techniques. Now, it's a little harder because, your helmet can get in the way with modern rules, but it still comes down to stick your shoulder in their gut or chest and drive them back and down. That is a classic tackle. And Edwards knows how to do it. For comparison, I think it was Hasty or Filippo, I forget which one. His tackling form, when he hits hard, he hits clean, he hits just like you should, but doesn't drive. He hits and then tries to wrestle the guy to the ground. Now he wraps up and wrestles him to the ground, but that's not going to fly in the Big 12. But watching Edwards is, well, I don't think he'll start his freshman year because we've got good players. But, man, he's going to play, and he's going to be a fan favorite. And, of course, Jackson is the second West Virginia player for the scholarship list, and I haven't watched his video. I'm ashamed of myself. I know he's a West Virginia player, and here I am. I can't even comment on him. But, just looking at the class, as it stands, if we add no one else, and, there are some spots we need another player, but if we added nobody else in this class, this would still be a near perfect class. And I do think that if you made a list of the players we wanted at each position, the ones that the coaches identified and said, hey, this is our number one target, number two, number three, number four. I don't know how far down the line they go. Our number one targets, first of all, may have been set higher than in the past. And again, I haven't really tracked this as closely in the past as I have the last month. Um, and sometimes we don't know who their early number one target was. We judge it partly by who comes in on official visits. Um, but their number one target for a lot of these positions, I think Leonard Jean Charles was the number one target. Filippo, they really wanted. Once they got a good look at him, and he is specifically being brought in for spear. Depending on weight gain, he could change position, but we are, we are targeting the spear a lot more specifically, especially in the high school recruiting. Instead of bringing in transfers there. But with Sessions, Stinier, and Etienne, they were either number one or number two targets. Zaw Jackson had to be high on the target list because they got him committed a long time ago. And Taylor Brown, I don't think he was necessarily number one because there are guys out there who are more developed at this point. But he was a strong, number two, and we got him. Now, one of the number ones is still, for the defensive line, still hasn't committed to anybody. And nobody really knows where he's leaning because he's not talking. Don't know what he's told the coaches. We've got some thunder going on here if you hear anything in the background. He could still turn around and commit to West Virginia. If not now, maybe towards fall. If he decides that, none of the top level schools are going to, take him, he would be our first choice. We would be his second choice. We'd take him anyway, I suspect. And that would, that would kick the defensive line up significantly. And we've got something similar going on at offensive line. We do have a defensive lineman who will probably commit to West Virginia. He's not definite, but he's a high likely, and he's good. So we should have news about that. Could be any time. Now, talk to cornerback. I did talk about Dwayne Galloway last week, I think it was, because he came on an official visit and then came back when his team came in for the 7-on-7 competition. He wasn't playing on that 7-on-7 team, but he came and hung around with the coaches all day long, and that caused a lot of chatter. Now, he didn't commit. He hasn't committed anyplace else, but the thinking is that he is going to commit, to, I think some are saying Kentucky, some say Purdue is still a favorite. He is an Ohio player, but he may still turn around and commit to West Virginia and would be the highest rated corner that we've got. He's considered the number one corner in Ohio. That would be a good get. All right. Well, I've been rambling a lot because we haven't had any additional questions. Coming up on 50 minutes. Does anybody out there have questions about particular players, about the class? What to call the defense, what to call the offense, what to call the coaches? And I'm sure some people out there have some very specific names for the coaches, depending on the play call here and there. Do appreciate everybody who has dropped in. Didn't get around to saying it, but if you have not done so, please subscribe. Um, please share. Sharing, I think, helps a lot. Of course, that depends on who your friends are. Um, and hey, don't just share on social media. You can call your friends. For the Rocky fans out there, I guess it would be, opening the window and yelling, "Yo, Polly!" Uh, but hey, if that's how it works, I'll take what I can get. Okay, folks, I don't see any more questions coming up here. I do hear some more thunder. We do need the rain, although it's not helping the heat all that much. At least, hey, once we sign off here, I can turn the air conditioner back on. Also go feed the cats and all that sort of thing. Oh, okay. Hey, Josh. Actually, no. Now, 2 years ago, the answer would have been yes. Last year, the answer would have been maybe. Will we lose anybody? Oh, yeah, probably. I mean, you don't win them all unless you're watching the movie Pleasantville, and most of you probably haven't. But they've been very, very, very particular about recruiting guys who want to be there, guys who are going to feel at home with the other players, and guys for whom feeling at home is one of the top two things that they're looking for in a program, the other being the coaching. And hey, the coaches are just knocking things out of the park. I mean, you probably saw, Brody McWhorter's father and coach just praising Tyler Allen up one side and down the other. And I think Allen deserves it. But if you have the coaches and you have the culture and you bring players in for fit, then you can get the retainment at a lower cost. You're still really going to end up paying out some money. These are players for whom money is not their number one factor, but they're not going to be completely, unmoney motivated. But schools, I think, would have to make major offers to get these guys away. Now, of course, with something like the quarterback room we're going to be having here in the next few years, we will lose one or two or even three of the quarterbacks, if we count through 26, because they're not all going to get to play as much as they want. Green waited because he had to develop. Marchiol waited because he could see that Green was beating him out, and he saw how he had to develop. But he will still get 2 years to start. Now, next year, he's not guaranteed the starting position, but he is the automatic leader to be number one. And then, Burton or, one of the young guys would have to, play over their head, I think, to knock him out of that position. But, that would mean, Burton would then be waiting 3 years to play. And each person, waiting 3 years with the chance to play 2 or a chance to play 1. And, you bring in somebody like McWhorter, who is more fully developed, I think, even than Marchiol was, coming in. He's going to be ready to start sooner. And if a guy knows they're not ready, and if they know the guy ahead of them really is outplaying them, you're trying to bring in guys who will look at that and just work harder. But if a guy is ready to start, they're good enough to start, the guy ahead of them maybe has more experience, then you're at risk for that guy to leave. Or if a guy thinks they're ready, even if they're not. But I don't think we are going to be having any serious losses. We will lose players. We will lose some good players. It's not going to go back to being a problem like it was the first few years with Brown, because, I mean, those were players who did not fit, and we did not have the culture, and the recruiting was not as refined. I mean, it's hard to refine fit when you don't have the culture. It's hard to have the culture when you don't have the fit. So had to gradually put all of that together. And we also have Fabianic, which I think makes a big difference. He's not in charge of high school recruiting. He's the general manager, but then you've got somebody who does most of the high school recruiting work, but he's still going to be involved. And I mean, he's got a background that's going to impress these players. He was an NFL scout, and he was a successful scout. He can tell these players things that other guys can't, and he has the credentials to back it up. So I think that will also make a difference. I mean, he does actually go around practice and talk to players as he goes. Not long conversations, but tidbits, sometimes harsh tidbits, but tending to be accurate ones. So, I mean, I think everything about the program. And, I mean, players are also commenting about how well it's run. You're not having major glitches, major misunderstandings. I mean, there's a clarity involved. And I think that, I mean, that's something the players want. They feel more secure. They feel, more confident in the coaches. And, even if, I mean, some players are actually going to transfer here because they go to programs and they don't find that. So even if we do lose players, I think we will do better and better in the transfer portal when we need to. Hadn't thought about it in that respect, so really appreciate that particular question. But I do think, that the improved recruiting and having the program really organized and running smoothly, which has taken a while, getting everything sorted out, getting the right coaches, readjusting coaching assignments. I mean, having an AD who really, I think he and Brown are half brothers or something and don't know it. I mean, they really just seem to see a lot of things the same way. And while players don't have a lot of contact with an AD, it does help set the mood. And if all the coaches are less stressed because they're not worrying about what's happening with the AD, that also affects, how the program is run and how it trickles down to the players. All right. Well, that was a simple question. And as usual, it got a long, rambling answer. That's one of the things I am best at. But I've enjoyed it. Appreciate everybody dropping in to listen. And appreciate those of you on YouTube who drop in, especially if you've made it all the way this far, even if you had to skip ahead to do it. Okay, folks, I will be back when we have another recruiting announcement. Of course, there are a bunch of other videos on the site. If you have not watched the one I did a couple of days ago about Garrett Green and how he could become the best quarterback in the Big 12, and I really believe that. And I think I partially documented it. We'll just have to see if he is able to do what he's trying to do. Okay, guys. I should be doing some other things, Much as I enjoy being here, I am going to go elsewhere, uh, and I will talk to you later. Thanks, and so long.